This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. One of our biggest and most lucrative industries is potentially sinking beneath the waves, and like a lot of other businesses, and a little bit like the Coast Guard, the cuts are not helping. John Winter is the president and CEO of the BC Chamber of Commerce. The subject is tourism. John, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, David.
Let's have a look, first of all, at the landscape. Just talk about the numbers, about how big tourism is and what an impact it has in so many facets of Canadian life.
It is the largest export, and people don't regard it as an export, but in reality, foreign dollars come in, are left and deposited in return for an experience. So it's the largest export industry in terms of employment.
Yes.
About 600,000 Canadians are employed in one facet or another of tourism.
Yes.
It contributes about $85 billion a year to the GDP of Canada. British Columbia, of course, is one of the leading players in that scheme, but
Yeah.
it's a huge industry. The only bigger export, I guess, in terms of dollar value would be oil and gas or the energy sector.
Yeah, amazing how many people are affected. I think, years ago I was a taxi driver, and we are recording this not far away from all the big hotels on the waterfront and the seaplanes. If tourism crashed or dropped by 50%, the taxi business would fold.
It's an interesting industry in that it has implications in so many different ways, and it's called an industry, which in many ways it isn't.
Why?
It's a group of subgroups. It's a group of hoteliers, of attractions people, of transportation people, of
Yes.
of people that all play and cater to a tourist, perhaps.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're all competitors. They all compete for that share of that same dollar. And sometimes they get in the way of each other in terms of the lack of cooperation that you'll often see.
I bet.
In terms of making things happen, of making decisions.
Well, if you think, if you Google B&B on the Sunshine Coast, what'll you get? 5,000 little mom and pop places?
Yeah.
I mean, Salt Spring Island must have 200 B&Bs.
Well, Salt Spring's not a good example. They don't
Why?
really want tourists. They don't seem to want anything over there. They've
true.
put up walls that are designed to keep people out. But,
they're torn.
But the island itself,
Yeah.
Vancouver Island itself, is certainly a major player. And I know us as a Chamber of Commerce network, many of our members on Vancouver Island chamber members have the nucleus of their membership are people in the tourism business, and B&B in particular.
Yeah, you think about obscure connections like clothing.
Yeah.
I mean, how many T-shirts are sold just because of tourism? And forget restaurants. How many packages of a salmon are taken away to foreign countries?
Yeah. Well, it's the ability to market Canada through tourism outlets that is really the key to many of our economic successes in Canada. So I think we've got something to sell.
Absolutely.
We've got a great product. We need to find ways to allow more people in the world to enjoy it.
So let's talk about this marriage between government and industry, because I think last week we were talking about government largesse and corporate welfare bums, but this is an industry where government and the private sector have to play with each other. They have to come together.
There's a direct correlation between the amount of money spent in marketing the product, whether it's the Niagara Falls or the CN Tower or Signal Hill in St. John's or whatever it is, and the number of people that come visit it. And that can be extrapolated out into an understanding of what that kind of investment is, who we're competing with, how much they're actually spending, and how much you need to spend. BC, for example, has this notion, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, I'm certainly no expert, that we don't need to spend as much money to compete with an Ontario or an Alberta.
Where did we get that idea?
Well, because we seem to have other better things going for us. There are many people in British Columbia who think if you build it, they'll come, sort of thing. It's not the right attitude. I'm not professing it, but it's kind of the saying in the sense that British Columbia can get by with less money in promoting, and in many cases we do. I mean, Tourism Vancouver is a very vital cog in terms of promoting both Vancouver and British Columbia as a destination. But their marketing budget is significantly less than many of their competitors in Canada, Montreal, Calgary, Toronto.
Well, we may be wonderful, and we may have all kinds of wonderful things to offer, but if folks don't know about it, what's the point?
Yeah, well, it's how you tell them. I mean, things like the Olympics have certainly raised the bar considerably. The business across the street here at the convention center has started to pick up considerably, largely because people who book events and book groups and book conventions find selling Vancouver is now easier to do because of the international awareness for it, the great pictures that went around the world during the Olympics and whatnot. So that's a legacy that'll be there for a long time, and we can build on that, but it can't be the sole foundation for a marketing program.
Well, let's talk about something you said in your opening remarks, that often the industry itself is snapping at each other within.
Well, snapping may not be the right word, but I think that
folks are competing.
Well, they compete for sure.
But they must understand that they've got to band together.
Yeah, they have to work. It's kind of an integrated industry that comes together as a whole at the end of the day. But at the same time, if you have attractions, for example, here in the Lower Mainland, competing with interior people who like to hike or camp or whatever. That's competing for the same dollar. They all have to work with the same airlines to get the people here. They have to work through the same airports or the same train stations or whatever it is that is part of that industry. And if they're not all pulling together, if they're not all cooperating with one another, if they're not all scheduling things so that that integration can work, then it's not going to be as attractive or as quality experience, I guess, for
one of the industries that strikes me as pulling together, and I may be wrong, it's just my impression because I know people in the hospitality industry, and that's hotels. It seems to me that all the big hoteliers here in town know each other. They have great respect for each other because we have some of the best hotel managers on earth, guys who keep winning awards and so on, and deservedly so. So that's one area. Am I wrong, John? That seems to be an area where they really get their act together.
Vancouver was one of the pioneers, if you like, in what's called affectionately as the 2% hotel tax. That's a surcharge on hotel rooms that was put in place by the industry many years ago, back in the 90s, to basically create funding to promote the product. And Tourism Vancouver is the result of its success, is the result of a lot of that. The tourism industry itself benefits greatly from that hotel tax, while many of the other players in the industry don't provide that kind of income for marketing.
Okay, so because
they live on the coattails of the Hotel Association.
Because I live here, I have very few reasons to stay in a hotel in Vancouver. But I'll tell you this. In my most recent excursion to San Francisco, staying right at Union Square in one of the big old famous hotels, the hotel room had these coupons from Macy's, and it was like 13% off everything, including sale items. And I walked across the street. There are two Macy's stores, one for women and children, one for men. I walked across, and like that, got a great salesperson, which I want to talk about later, about service, and got a lamb's wool V-neck sweater for $40 because there was cut.
Right.
I mean, this is a great relationship between a store and a hotel.
Yeah, and competition is forcing that kind of relationship to happen in so many different ways. So that demonstrates, I think, a lot to do with the way people communicate these days, the more sophistication perhaps that goes into creating marketing programs, and the highly competitive nature of not only retail, but tourism and the role retail would play in that. I would hope that the Canadian markets would get into that mode as well. I don't know that they're not. You don't hear much about it. You hear more about the problems that we face Canada and BC perhaps being sort of a high cost and fairly complicated market to visit.
Why? Why is it complicated?
Well, complicated because for some of the less traditional markets, Mexico, Brazil,
Yes. Yeah.
some of the Asian markets, you need a visa. And so it's not something that happens very easily. Canada doesn't make it easy to get something like that if you're in a foreign land and want to come here. The foreign countries spend an awful lot of money marketing their wares to Canadians. We're great travelers. We will spend a lot of time in other countries. We don't seem to get that benefit here because of these little barriers that we toss at people.
But and one of those barriers you pinpointed in a recent op-ed piece in The Sun, and you said that America, for all of its glories and faults, is much better at processing things like foreign visas, so often in 24 hours, whereas Canada is a world of paperwork.
Well, Canada's a world of paperwork, and it's seen in so many different ways. The problems we're having right now with work stoppages in our international embassies and the like is felt not just in tourism, it's felt in post-secondary education, it's felt in areas where foreign temporary workers are used. It's a big problem, and it's having an impact on Canada's economy. But perhaps nowhere than in places such as Whistler or others that use circulating seasonal foreign workers to come and provide the supports for that kind of industry. And again, it's something that as a province we feel the impact because we're major players and it's a major destination, particularly for Asians.
Well, what do you say about this dilemma? We just have a couple of minutes before our break. You said that this is an expensive place, and certainly affordability is a major issue for tourists worldwide, yet New York, Venice, Rome, Paris, London, they're not suffering.
No.
Cities that cost a fortune, we have to be honest. San Francisco's an expensive town. These places are expensive. We all flock to them because they're great places.
Yeah. And I think that tourists will flock to Vancouver. They go to Toronto. They'll visit Montreal and many of the major attractions, locations, the Niagara Falls of this world. They go there. I think that it's just that we need to be reminding people around the world that Canada's not a high level of awareness internationally. In China, Canada has some awareness, British Columbia would have none. So you've got to kind of remind people that the destination is Canada. Now you can go to a number of places in Canada. Here are the options that you're facing.
Well, we have these stolid frozen images, literally frozen, because when I travel abroad, people treat me as an exotic because I'm from Canada. Yeah. It's only a country of 36 or 37 million people, and people still think of us as the frozen tundra, and there's polar bears walking down the street and so on.
It's an image that we certainly have been flaunting for a long time, whether it's moose or it's beavers or the Great White North. But I think that something has happened that's going to start to change a lot of that in terms of our ability to success from expos in Montreal or here, success from the Olympics, of course, and a number of things that show us as being different, yet I think appropriate and safe place to visit and expensive, but value. The value for the dollar is quite apparent.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some cultural issues and inroads that we may or may not be making, and then we'll talk about what might the government doing that it's not doing without breaking the bank. John Winter's our guest from the BC Chamber of Commerce. We're going to take a little break, which allows you to check out our website, davidberner.com. Happy to have your comments at any time. And also an opportunity for the good friends who support us here to say hello. On Shaw Community Television, Cable 4, we'll be back with you in just a minute. This program has been made possible. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home. Building recovery that works. Tourism is certainly one of the biggest industries right here in British Columbia and in Canada. And our guest, John Winter, is the president and CEO of the BC Chamber of Commerce. And I think we've put his website up a couple of times. You can go and check it out. Speaking of websites, we're talking about tourism. Just before I left the house to come and meet you today, I looked at I didn't look at Destination BC. I looked at Hello BC and I looked at Tourism BC. And I know we've got some very good people in Tourism BC, and certainly Rick, the guy who's been running it for years, is an
Tourism Vancouver.
Yeah, Tourism Vancouver is exemplary in his work and so on, and a major drum beater for us all. But I got to tell you, I looked at Hello BC and I went, It was like no energy. There's like, I could have been looking at a corporate, I could have been looking at a mining company.
Right.
Like when I go to a tourism, if I go to Arizona, welcome to Arizona, I want music, I want noise, I want flashing lights.
Color.
I want color. And so, there's some pretty pictures, but to be honest, they look like postcards from, 1953.
Well, stay tuned.
Okay.
Destination BC is new. It's just been created in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
It has a board of directors that's been appointed of people from within the industry, industry experts, if you like, people who know their industry and understand how the industry fluctuates up and down, how systems work, how markets can be penetrated and brought to bear. And I think this will take it out of the political realm, because the politics of tourism can be the same as the politics of any industry, where you have to sort of go to local constituencies and see how that's going to work. In this case, this is a cross-sectoral board of governors, board of directors, who I have great hopes will bring a degree of sanity, but more importantly, will be better salespeople for the industry, for the product in the long term. And I think we'll win as a result.
I hope so. Look, this is a funny country. It's a gigantic country with very few people, and it's so spread out, and it's spread out mostly along this 49th parallel. What, if anything, should any of us in the industry and or the government be doing about transportation? I'm talking about the airlines in particular, but also, I'm sorry, but we don't have rail because of the distances and so on. We don't have rail the way we used to, and B, the way you can anywhere in Europe. Most Canadians I know, before they go to Europe, they're on the internet and looking at a Europass, because everybody has discovered how easy and wonderful it is to get a ticket that keeps you going for a month.
It's catering to the high end, which I think is what we've been doing very well. Examples of like Rocky Mountaineer have been very successful. One of the most successful privately owned products in the whole area of transportation and tourism.
In the world. It's an amazing product.
But you're right, it is a huge country. We cater in many respects to tour groups that come in, particularly from Asia, that like to travel, and their notion of seeing Canada is to visit Vancouver, Calgary, Niagara Falls, PEI, and go home, kind of thing. And that can be done, but people don't really have the comprehension of how big the country really is and how much time it takes to get from one place to another. But it's cost, our way we treat our airports, the way our airports are taxed, and the cost that they have to contribute to, whether it's security or whether it's navigation or whether it's any of the things that go into operating an airport, unlike any of our competitors.
We the taxpayers, am I correct, are paying for security in a way, and in our tickets, in a way that other countries don't.
Well, travelers are paying for security. You basically should be paying for it based on your use of it. I don't believe that's the proper way to do it. I don't sure that anything, from my perspective, one of the government's primary role in life is to provide security for its citizens.
Yeah, defense,
and
police.
Why we all of a sudden feel that we have to add surcharges to provide better security. When we opened up the port of Prince Rupert, the government wanted to slap on more taxes to cover security for that international port. Well, I don't think that's the case. Government should be doing that for us. The same with bringing in the second Amtrak train from Seattle.
Right.
Again, one of the prohibitions, or one of the problems with doing that, was the prohibitive cost that people would have to face to clear border security, going both ways. This doesn't make any sense because these are the things that contribute to the bottom line of the country, pay taxes, considerable taxes, and also bring people and visitors into our country who will pay a lot and leave a lot of money behind them, the $85 billion I talked about.
Can we ever get an airline or a group of airlines to get us a ticket from Vancouver to Winnipeg and back for less than $500? Because that's flat crazy. Because I can go to a lot of places for $500, and I can certainly go to California.
You can fly cheaper outside of Canada than you can fly within Canada.
That's my point.
I suspect it's got more to do with competition than anything else, but at the same time, there is no pushback. I mean, Air Canada and WestJet have kind of got a captive audience in Canada. They operate as though they own the airports. The airports should be acting a whole lot more independently. We can be proud of YVR here in Vancouver and BC.
It's an immense
It's one of the
success.
best airports in the world. And
they rent out their knowledge to other airports
they do.
around the
They
world.
work to make others successful, for sure. Yet we've got streams of people who cross the border to Bellingham to fly to Hawaii or fly to Mexico or to fly within in the U.S. even. Sure. We've turned away Emirates, we've turned away Singapore, we've turned away Air France. We're not allowing the competition to come in here and provide Canadians with a better degree of service, but not just service, to provide us with economic activity.
Why are we disallowing Emirates and Air France?
Well, the theory from Ottawa was that Emirates has got enough service from Toronto. Canadians are well enough served by that, and it's sheer nonsense because it's not something that helps British Columbia or helps Western Canada for that matter. It's protection of corporate big players who perhaps if they need the protection, they should be checking their modus operandi a little bit closer. We need competition. Competition is what keeps the consumers able to consume, and if we don't provide airfares and costs of travel that are competitive in the world, we'd have this thing called the Asia-Pacific strategy. So we've invested lots of money in infrastructure, whether it's an airport or it's a bridge or it's a port in Rupert or wherever it is. But if at the same time we're not providing access to those and making them work for us, then we've only got half the job done.
Yeah, someone in some other parts of the world is doing a pretty good job, because I can tell you that for many years, all of the people in gondolas in Venice were from Japan. And now there are very few Japanese in gondolas, and they're all Mandarin speaking from mainland China. So someone is doing a job there.
Well, that perhaps reflects, too, the difficulty Japan has been having economically.
Yes,
and
I
now
appreciate that.
The fact that China has been opened as a destination, or as giving Chinese citizens access to the world.
And a growing middle class.
It's huge in BC even right now. The growth of the Chinese tourist in British Columbia is phenomenal. It is not in the league with the American size of the market, but it's really growing rapidly.
What do you know about how we're doing in terms of simple, even old-fashioned things like television ads that show up in New Hampshire, or I subscribe to 2 glossy magazines. I see the occasional Canada ad, and sometimes they're pretty good, sometimes they're sort of nothing. There's a mix, you know. That's a kind of hit and miss business. Do you know that we're doing that? Or we're
doing some of it. We're doing some of it. We're not doing enough of it. And there's the problem.
We could do more.
We've certainly cut back on a lot of it. But it's not very well planned, David. We've got the Canadian marketing agency, Tourism Canada, I guess, selling our product in various parts around the world, and they're working with their travel partners and their hotels and whatever. I mean, they do good planning, they do good execution, whatever. But at the same time, you've got PEI or Newfoundland or British Columbia or Alberta or somebody out there also flogging their products as a destination, in some sense competitively to what Tourism Canada is doing. And if they're not saying the same thing, or if they're saying something different, it doesn't help the product. It's here and locally, we've got communities in British Columbia, which I won't talk about by name, but consider themselves to be destinations, and the reality is they're not. You can't market some of these communities to places in Japan or Korea and say, come visit us in ABC, because they have to come to Vancouver to do that. So let's market Vancouver and British Columbia, and when they get here, let's beat them up and make sure they go to where we want them to go. But let's be realistic and not waste a lot of taxpayer money and the industry money on things that are really not going to generate much business.
That job that Burnaby BC Travel offered me, I shouldn't take it?
No, but I think you're onto something because
Or
that's the
on some-
point.
yeah.
You know, I think the point is not to pick on Burnaby,
Yeah.
but Burnaby will benefit considerably from tourists coming into British Columbia through IVR.
Absolutely.
And doing
And you
their
know
thing.
what I want? I want, as a tourist, whether it's here or it's somewhere else in the world, I want to be surprised. I want to see an ad or a message that goes, "Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's
aha
neat."
moment, yeah.
Well, aha moment. I want a bunch of those aha moments. Yeah.
You know, we're a nice place to visit. We've
And we're nice
spectacular
people, and we
scenery,
gotta
we've got
stop it.
wonderful people, but we need to be a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
We need to be really hardworking.
30 seconds service. I'm sorry, this is one of my big issues in life. I think we have almost the worst service on earth in terms of going to restaurants and shops and so on. And I hope that Nordstrom's, when it opens up at Robson and Howe and so on, changes us all.
There's no doubt when you have a different experience in retail in particular in the US, you tend to come away with a nicer feeling of being served, being looked after.
Yeah.
Investment in training, maybe what's lacking in Canada. Maybe we're not spending enough money to make ourselves better. I don't know.
And now we have this generation.
Who don't want service, they want their own privacy, I guess. Yeah.
John, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Okay, John Winter, President and CEO of BC Chamber of Commerce. Next week, I think we're revisiting this subject. I'm so flaky, I can't remember, but I think we did something about this, and that's the park board wants to soak up all little community centers, and there are at least 6 community centers saying, no, you don't. Thanks for being with us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.